I I don't even know where to start. How do I even start this? Hey guys, welcome to the final episode discussion / review of Sherlock Series 4, episode number 3, titled The Final Problem. Now, as in my previous reviews, I'm going to have to initiate a major spoiler warning. I'm going to be talking about a lot of things in this episode that may or may not people dislike. I kind of have some issues with it, but we'll get into that. But there is a massive spoiler warning into effect, so turn back now. Was that intimidating enough? I'm not really sure. I don't know what that was. Basically, you get it. I'm going to be talking about some stuff about this episode that you may not want to hear if you haven't seen it yet. The third episode, The Final Problem, is the culmination of what we have experienced, if that's the best way I can put it, what we've experienced thus far in Series 4. And it's been quite a ride. I mean, I don't really know how to describe what's really happened. But what happens in this episode, essentially, is that Sherlock, Watson, and Mycroft have to match with Euros, which is the other Holmes sibling. So the start of this episode is definitely one of the strangest and one of the creepiest. It starts out with Mycroft in his sort of, not hotel, it's more like his whole mansion, I suppose. We only get to see part of it. But essentially what's happening is he's watching this movie and it starts flickering and things start going wrong. He goes outside. There's like a little girl sort of like running around and it's like a mannequin and it's super, super creepy. And then like the paintings start to bleed. And then there's a clown that's super creepy again with a sword. And it has to be one of the most horrific like beginnings to a show. Like this beginning matched or exceeded most horror movies nowadays, which is saying a lot because this like little sequence was creepy as fuck. But essentially it was all a ruse in order to get Mycroft to tell the truth about Euros and to reveal that Sherlock does have a sibling which he for some reason cannot remember. And it turns out that Mycroft had sort of manipulated Sherlock, I guess, into forgetting that he had a sister. Same thing with like their parents, like he made them believe she was dead. Also, we find out that going back to the end of the last episode where Watson supposedly gets shot, we find out it's only with a tranquilizer. It really wasn't that bad, nor as dramatic as they made it seem, but that's just the culmination of what happens in the beginning of this episode. To be honest, this was one of my least favorite episodes of the entire show, like Series 1 through now Series 4. This really wasn't that great of an episode. But let's be honest, it still beats The Blind Banker. That episode is absolutely the worst. And I think that some of the things that disappointed me the most about this episode was that it contained things that I liked or little bits that I liked that were put together, but it just didn't fully put them together in a way that made it an enjoyable episode for me to watch. For instance, if you have seen some of my past videos, you know that I like shows, movies, games that have compiled elements that like are filled with like small puzzles, games, whatever, objectives that lead to a larger objective. And this episode contained that, but I found myself rolling my eyes at a lot of it because it just wasn't Sherlock. It was something completely different. Now hear me out. I know exactly what it was, and when I say what it was, you're going to probably realize it with me. But this is what I theoretically think it was that we saw in this episode. The first example is that there is a man who is trapped in a room with some other individuals, and those individuals have to kill this man in order to save this other person's life. If not, then the other person dies. This person is being forced to be killed by these other people by someone on a screen. Then 3 people are suspended outside of a window in a separate room for a different puzzle that Sherlock has to solve. Then these people are, spoiler alert, dropped and killed for various reasons. But again, there's another person on a screen the entire time. And to me, that is not Sherlock. That is Saw. This is essentially a Saw movie, just sort of put on a BBC network where it wasn't as brutal as a Saw movie could be, where this person on a screen is triggering these deaths of other people based on where they are located inside of this like maze sort of situation room type of thing. And I found myself rolling my eyes at it. I just didn't like it. It was way over the top and it was set up in a way that it just felt overused, not very compelling. I mean, even Saw did it better because, I mean, people died more gruesome, This one is just like, okay, they sort of fall, or someone gets shot and you don't really see any blood. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't want to see like super gruesome stuff, but at least show what real life is like when there's blood when someone gets shot, or when like the consequences of some certain actions. It just simply doesn't go that extra mile. Again, I know it's for TV, but if you're going to go that route, either go full on or change it up a bit. There was an element to this episode that I did like related to that, however, in that when Sherlock and all around me are familiar faces. An element of this episode that I did like a lot, though, was something that Sherlock and Watson kept saying to each other when they kept encountering different situations at different rooms, and that was that they had to be soldiers. Now, this isn't a big thing, but I like the fact that they keep having to reiterate to one another that they have to focus on the task at hand in order to save other people's lives in this grander scheme, that they can't be selfish and their own sort of methods and games that's going on right now to them, that they have to focus on the bigger problem, the final problem if you want to call it, because that's the title of the episode. But I feel like that they're refocusing of each other when they tell each other that they have to be soldiers today. I thought that was kind of important and kind of a big deal, and I felt like that was something that showed their relationship a lot. Like, it definitely felt like it added a lot more to their relationship, that they could bring each other back to reality, that they could really ground one another and focus on the task at hand. There's also a super emotional moment with Molly. Now, there's a bomb that Euros is going to set off with Molly's apartment if Sherlock can't get her to tell him that she loves him. Now, that takes a lot of guts because obviously Molly has loved Sherlock since the very beginning of Series 1. And it's a big moment, and she doesn't want to say it. Eventually she does, and we find out that there was no bomb. But damn, poor Molly. I mean, she went through some emotional hell. Even Sherlock got pretty emotional when he breaks the casket and stuff like that in the room that they're in. And it was a very emotionally charged moment, not only for Molly, but also for Sherlock. However, that's kind of the last we see of Molly. We don't really see her character for the rest of the episode, and you kind of feel bad, especially after the emotional, like, torture that she just sort of had to go through. Like, she just sort of hangs up the phone and that's it. We do see her for like half a second at the very end of the whole episode. She's literally just walking into 221B Baker Street, and that's about it. Like, she's like happy, but is she in a relationship with Sherlock? Has their dynamic changed? We don't know. Just we're sort of left on a cliffhanger with Molly and Sherlock and how that whole relationship has shaken out. But perhaps one of the most brilliant aspects of the entire episode, we get to see and sort of bring back in a way James Moriarty. I mean, his re-entrance was sheer brilliance. The way he comes in on the helicopter, sort of does like this weird dance thing with his earbuds, very reminiscent of like his earlier dance sequence when he wore the crown in like Series 2, I think, if I remember right. But I just love Moriarty. His brand of crazy is a whole new brand. Now, we unfortunately don't get to spend very much time with him because in the scene that we get to see with him, we find out happened 5 years earlier. So he is definitely dead, and he's not coming back, which was, of course, a big hope when that first the Miss Me video came out in the last episode of Series 3. Now, again, Andrew Scott's performance was absolutely brilliant as Moriarty, hands down the best Moriarty that I've seen thus far. If there is ever a Series 5, I hope we get to see maybe a little other flashbacks here and there, just some more of his brand of crazy, because it just fits perfectly. It's the perfect brand of crazy to match Sherlock's brilliance. Now, something that I felt rather neutral about in the episode relates to Redbeard. We find out in a major twist that Redbeard was not in fact Sherlock's dog, but rather his best friend named Victor Trevor. Now, in the original stories, Victor Trevor was a roommate, best friend of Sherlock Holmes when he was in college. In this version, it was when they were children. Now, I like that little change, especially considering that it sort of speculated that Victor Trevor could have been a sort of a relationship romantically for Sherlock when he was younger. That's not necessarily like fully canon, I don't think, but just the fact that it could have been. But I like the fact that they changed it to them being kids. It sort of makes the relationship a little bit more innocent and not necessarily forced into a more romantic type of thing and really setting sail for John Locke in the future. But the only thing that I didn't really like about that is the amount of hope that I felt when it was revealed that Redbeard was not a dog, that it was actually a kid, my hopes shot sky high that there would, in fact, like I said in my last video, be a fourth Holmes sibling that would be Tom Hiddleston. But once we find out that it was Victor Trevor and not an actual Holmes, everything just crushed, that we wouldn't get to see Tom Hiddleston as that Holmes brother. But, you know, my hopes were sky high. It just didn't pan out. It kind of sucks, but that little twist was definitely very intriguing when you were watching the episode. And speaking of things that didn't really necessarily pan out, John Locke. Now, again, I reiterated in my last video, John Locke is the ship name between John and Sherlock. That's like more of a romantic and sexual relationship. Again, I don't think that it came about in the way that people really wanted to see as fans, but I don't think it's completely dead. I still think that the John Locke ship is out there on the sea, on the water somewhere, because if you see in the last few moments of the episode, John and Sherlock are passing Rosie around very much like parents do. They're like, Sherlock's holding Rosie and is like, oh, it's your dad, you know. They're being very cutesy with her in a way that parents are. Not necessarily that their relationship is sexual or that type of a relationship, but just the fact that they are living together and raising a child sort of brings that hope that John Locke is still alive in my mind. That ship is still sailing, it is still afloat. Just not in the way that fans wanted. Is it disappointing that it didn't happen in a romantic or sexual way? Probably to most fans, but I still think, again, the ship is still alive. But the last and final thing that I have to talk about in this episode is something that irked me on a level that I was not even prepared for, you guys. So, in this episode, it is basically Sherlock takes on the mantle of Batman not once, but twice. Now, Bob Kane, the original creator of Batman, was pretty much influenced by Sherlock Holmes to create Batman. He has a lot of similar aspects between the two characters. However, there are two instances in this episode where it's so parallel that they're almost in the same line. Like, it's ridiculous how much Sherlock Holmes is like Batman. The first instance being when he gets onto this little ship on the way to Sherringford, the island, which, by the way, is the prison. Sherringford is the prison that Euros is being held at. Is not the Holmes sibling. That is Euros. But that's beside the point. But anyway, so Sherlock is on this little ship. He's on top of the galley, I think is the technical ship term. But he jumps down and his coat literally flaps open like Batman's cape. And it looks like Batman from the poster of Batman Begins, where he's flying down type of thing. It was so ridiculous. And to make matters worse, I thought that was bad. But in the end of this episode, when Mary sent a final video of Miss You to Sherlock and Watson, and in the video she's sort of hyping up how their relationship could be, how they need each other for cases and to keep each other stable, stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. And in the final moments of this trailer, Watson and Sherlock literally run outside of a building in slow motion, a la Batman Forever or Batman and Robin. The only thing that was missing was, instead of the bat symbol being behind them, it should have been the deer stalker symbol, because this was so much parallel. The slow-mo running, the only thing that was missing was that spotlight and the black background. That was the only thing, and it would just drove me so insane. And that's the way the episode ended, and I was so frustrated just based on that alone, because I felt like it was so cheesy for them to go out on, especially if this is going to be the last series. And the way that that's going to end, you're going to end with that slow-mo Batman Forever run. Out of all things you could have done with these characters that people care so much about, it just blew my mind completely. Not in a good way either. But I mean, I just didn't like this episode. There was something about it. There were just so many different elements that I didn't like about the episode as a whole, that this whole series, to be honest with you, hasn't even been the best. They dropped off a lot. It was very confusing, a lot of continuity errors, especially in this episode with how Euros got out of prison and Sherringford, how she got off of this island, went and visited Sherlock. How did Sherlock not know it was his sister? How was he sort of brainwashed by Mycroft? There are so many questions I feel like it's almost like lost or something. Like, I have more questions than what we should have gotten answers to. Yeah, it did have some cool elements, but it just didn't really fulfill and feel like the Sherlock we've known and come to love over the past 3 series. But guys, other than that, I think that's most of the gripes and complaints, things that I liked, disliked about this last episode and the series overall. If you have seen all the episodes or this episode in particular, let me know down in the comment section down below what you think. What did you think of Series 4? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? How do you think it compared to the other 3 seasons? Which one did you like the most? What elements would you have rather seen? Would you have preferred more John Locke? There's 1,000 questions. There's 1,000 theories out there for all of those Sherlock fans. And this discussion could go on for years. I don't even know if they're going to do a Series 5. I know there's a lot of drama behind the scenes. And the way this whole thing ended, it kind of seemed like it wrapped it up, but at the same time it didn't. I don't know. I don't really know what to say about it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section down below, like I said. Also, while you're down there, let me know if you like this sort of thing that I was doing with the whole Sherlock series. If you want to see more TV shows talked about, like I did Stranger Things before. I did Sherlock now. I'm thinking maybe doing a series of unfortunate events when I finish that. Maybe I'll do Westworld. I haven't decided yet. I really liked Westworld. So we'll see. Let me know down in the comment section if you like this type of thing, if you like more TV stuff, more movie stuff. But also be sure to check out my Power Rangers trailer review, which I just posted. Super excited about that movie. That trailer got me so hyped. And all the other videos that I'm doing, I've also got my Disney and Pixar one that I'm super excited to be doing soon. So be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that. Guys, thank you so much for watching. You really are the best. And I'll see you in the next one.